You slice it, you top it, you stand on that tee box and quietly hope that drive that leaks right every single time. I know exactly why it keeps happening to you, and I promise it isn't your grip and it isn't your gym membership. Here's the strange part. The one move that fixes your driver was figured out by a man with only one leg, almost 100 years ago. Then it quietly disappeared. I found it buried in a book from 1937 that most golfers today have never even heard of. And I promise you this, by the end of the next few minutes, you'll be able to swing it in your own living room tonight with something already sitting in your pocket. You don't need a coach. You don't need new clubs. You just need to see what I saw. Let me take you back to the moment this whole thing started. Because I didn't go looking for it, it found me. I was reading an old golf magazine, one of those crumbling ones from decades back that you find in a box at an estate sale, and there was a single sentence in the corner of a page that stopped me cold. It described a professional golfer playing in New York who had lost his right leg below the knee in the First World War. And it said, almost as an afterthought, that this one-legged man could outdrive two-legged players half his age. I read that sentence 3 times because it made no sense. Everything I had ever been told about hitting a driver was about the legs. Load into the back leg, drive off the ground, push through the floor. Every coach, every video, every glossy tip says the power comes up from the ground through your legs and hips. So how does a man standing on one leg in a wooden prosthetic launch a golf ball past healthy men in their 20s? That contradiction is the thread I started pulling. And the more I pulled, the more I realized somebody had quietly cut this thread out of modern golf on purpose. Not because it didn't work, because it worked too well, and it was too simple, and simple doesn't sell. Let me show you what I found. The man's name was Ernest Jones. He was born in England in 1887, and he was already a promising young golf professional before the war, working at a club and playing well enough to compete with the best of his era. Then came 1916, the Battle of the Somme. Ernest Jones was serving as a soldier, and a grenade took his right leg. He woke up in a hospital, a young athlete, a golfer, with one leg gone below the knee. Most men would have accepted that their playing days were over. But here is the detail that made me sit up straight, and I checked it in more than one source before I believed it. Within months of losing his leg, before he even had a proper artificial limb, Ernest Jones went out onto a golf course. He balanced on his one good leg, propped on crutches, and he played. And on that day, standing on one leg, he shot an 83 for 18 holes. If you play golf, you know how absurd that is. Most healthy people with 2 legs and years of lessons never break 90. He shot 83 on one leg. And later, with a wooden peg leg fitted, he got himself down into the low 70s. Scores that would beat almost everyone reading this right now. So I asked the only question that mattered: how? And the answer he gave over and over for the rest of his life was 4 words: swing the club head. That was it. That was his whole secret. Swing the club head. Now, the first time I read that, I'll be honest with you, I felt cheated. Swing the club head? That sounds like a fortune cookie. That sounds like the kind of empty thing a coach says when he doesn't want to explain anything. I almost put the book down. But then I thought about the one-legged man again. He couldn't drive off the ground. He couldn't load his back leg and explode through the floor because he didn't have a back leg to load. Whatever those 4 words meant, they had to describe something completely different from what I'd been taught. And that is exactly why it stopped me. Because if his secret was real, it meant the whole story I'd been sold about power in the golf swing was, at best, only half true. So that closed one small question and cracked open a much bigger one. I now knew who figured it out and roughly how well it worked. What I did not yet understand was what those 4 words actually meant, or why on earth a method this good had been allowed to fade away. And when I chased that second question down, that's when I got angry. Because here's the thing I want you to sit with for a second. Ernest Jones didn't keep this a secret. He wrote it down. He moved to the United States. He set up a teaching studio right in the middle of Manhattan. And for decades, he taught thousands of people, from beginners to champions. In 1937, he published his method in a book, and later an even more complete version titled simply Swing the Clubhead. He gave it all away. It was there in black and white for anyone who wanted it. So why had I never heard of it? Why has almost no one on any golf channel you watch ever mentioned this man's name? Let me tell you what I believe happened, because the trail is pretty clear once you follow the money. Ernest Jones taught one idea. One. He believed the entire golf swing was a single motion, and that motion was simply swinging the weight of the club head. He thought that once you truly felt that, everything else, your wrists, your arms, your hips, your balance, would organize itself around that swinging weight, the same way your whole body organizes itself naturally when you swing a bucket of water without spilling it. Now think about that from a business point of view. If the answer is one feeling, and you can teach it in an afternoon with something from your pocket, how many lessons can you sell? How many gadgets? How many training aids with straps and beeping sensors and monthly app subscriptions? None. You can't build an industry on one simple truth that a person masters in a week, but you can build an enormous industry on the opposite idea, on the idea that the golf swing is fantastically complicated, that it has dozens of separate positions you must hit perfectly, that your takeaway is wrong, and your wrist angle is wrong, and your hip depth is wrong, and your shoulder plane is wrong, and each one of those needs its own lesson, its own drill, its own device, and that, over the second half of the 20th century, is exactly the direction golf instruction went. It got broken into pieces. It got mechanical. It got measured and diced into so many positions that the average golfer now stands over the ball with a dozen thoughts in his head, frozen, and slices it into the trees. The simple, whole swinging idea that a one-legged man used to shoot in the 70s got buried under an avalanche of paid complexity. What does swinging the club head actually feel like, and how does it fix the specific thing that's wrecking your driver right now? Because a slogan doesn't fix a slice. I needed the mechanism, and to find it I had to dig into a second forgotten name. That name was Percy Boomer. Boomer was another British teaching professional from the same golden era, and in 1942 he published a book called On Learning Golf that a handful of the best players in the world still quietly pass around like a secret to this day. Boomer and Jones were chasing the same truth from two directions, and when I read them side by side, the mechanism finally cracked open for me. Here is what I finally understood, and I want you to really get this, because this is the piece that changes your driver. When you were told power comes from your legs and your body, that created a picture in your mind. The picture is that your body is the engine and the club is just a stick you're holding on to. So what do? You use your big muscles, your shoulders and your chest and your arms to force that stick around as hard as you can. You hit at the ball. You throw everything from the top straight down toward the ball with your hands and shoulders. And that right there is the exact move that makes you slice and top and lose distance. Golf coaches have a name for it. They call it casting or coming over the top. When you use your strong upper body to hurl the club at the ball from the very start of your downswing, the club head gets thrown outward and the face falls open and the ball squirts weakly off to the right. Every single time. Ernest Jones's 4 words fix this by flipping the whole picture upside down. The club head is not a dead weight on the end of a stick that you drag around with your muscles. The club head is the thing you swing, and your body is what responds to it. Think about a weight on the end of a string. If you hold the string and move your hand in a small circle, the weight swings out into a big, smooth, wide arc all on its own. You are not muscling that weight around. You are just guiding it. And the physics, what the old books called centrifugal force, does the real work. The weight builds its own speed and reaches maximum speed at the very bottom of the arc. That is what a golf club is. The shaft is the string, the club head is the weight. And your job, your only job, is to swing that weight smoothly so it reaches its top speed exactly as it passes the ball, and so the face is square when it gets there because you never yanked it offline with your muscles in the first place. When I first read this, it sounded nice but abstract. So I tested it because that's the only way I trust anything. I went out with my own driver, the same one I'd been fighting for years, and instead of trying to crush the ball, I did just one thing. I made my only thought the feeling of the club head swinging back and swinging through, heavy, like that weight on a string, letting it be the fast part while I stayed smooth and quiet in my body. The first swing, the ball came off the face with a sound I hadn't heard in years. A crack instead of a slap. It went dead straight, and it carried farther than my angry, muscled swings ever had. I stood there almost annoyed, because it felt like I'd done nothing. And that's the point. Doing less is the secret. The one-legged man wasn't overpowering the club. He was letting the club swing and just staying out of its way. So a huge piece snapped into place for me. I understood the feeling, and I understood why it kills a slice and adds distance. But I could feel a doubt rising, maybe the same one rising in you right now, and it opened the next question wide. That's the villain here. Not one person, it's the slow, quiet replacement of a thing you could own for free with a thing you have to keep paying for. And once I saw that pattern, I couldn't unsee it, because it's the same pattern I keep finding in every corner of these forgotten methods. If you want to go deeper into exactly where these buried methods come from, why they disappeared, and how to apply them one by one, I've put everything I've uncovered into a series of digital books called First Fix, Deep Fixes, and System Complete. They're not lessons. They're the research trail written out so you can follow it yourself and own the knowledge permanently the same way the one-legged man owned his. You'll find them linked in the description below, and if you're the kind of person who stayed this far into the video, you already know whether they're for you. So now I understood why it vanished. But I still had the hardest question of all sitting in front of me, unanswered. Because you might be thinking, that's fine on a driving range with a bucket of balls and a pro standing there, but I can't take lessons. I don't have a fancy launch monitor. I've got a bad back or bad knees, and I'm not about to rebuild my whole swing at my age in my ordinary life. This sounds like it's for younger people with time and money. I want to stop right here and talk to you, specifically, if that's the thought in your head. Because this is the part of the whole story that made me love Ernest Jones. This is the part that proves this method was built for exactly the person who feels left behind by modern golf. Ernest Jones did not teach on a fancy range with technology. He taught in a small indoor studio in a building in New York City. No launch monitors, no high-speed cameras, no apps, and his single most famous teaching tool cost nothing because it was a pocket knife and a handkerchief. Here's what he did, and here's what you are going to do tonight in your living room with no clubs, no range, and no money spent. Ernest Jones would take an ordinary folding pocket knife, the kind a man carried in his trousers every day back then, and he would tie it to one corner of a handkerchief. Then he'd hold the opposite corner of the handkerchief between his fingers, so the knife dangled at the bottom like a little weight on a limp cloth string. Now watch what that simple thing teaches. That handkerchief is soft. It has no stiffness at all. The only way on earth you can make that knife swing back and forth in a smooth arc is to swing it. If you try to force it, if you make a sudden jerky muscular move, the cloth just crumples and the knife flops and dies. It flat out will not work. The handkerchief refuses to let you cheat. But if you make a small, smooth, rhythmic motion with your fingers and hand, the knife swings out, and back, building a beautiful wide arc, reaching its fastest point at the bottom every single time. The soft cloth forces you to feel the exact motion that makes a golf club work. It teaches your hand the one thing that matters, and physically refuses to teach you the wrong thing. You don't have to have a pocket knife and a handkerchief. I'll tell you what I used. Sitting on my own couch, I took my house key, tied it to one end of a shoelace, held the other end between my thumb and finger, and swung it. That's it. A key and a shoelace. Everything I've been describing, you can feel in the next 60 seconds with two things you already own. Sit or stand, hold the top of that lace, and swing the key back and forth. Feel how you cannot force it. Feel how smoothness makes it go faster than force ever could. Feel how it reaches top speed at the bottom of the arc. Feel how, when you keep your motion smooth and let the weight lead, the whole thing settles into an easy rhythm your muscles could never fake. That feeling in your fingers is the exact feeling you want in your hands on the golf course. That is what swinging the club head means. Not a slogan, a physical sensation you can now produce on demand for free on your living room floor at any age, with any body, bad back or not, because it asks nothing of your strength and everything of your rhythm. Do it for 5 minutes a night for a week. Just swing the key on the lace and feel it. You are quietly retraining your hands and your brain to swing instead of hit, and you haven't even picked up a club. This is the whole reason a man on one leg could beat healthy men. He wasn't stronger. He had simply trained the swinging feeling until it was automatic, and his missing leg forced him to stop relying on muscle and body heave the way the rest of us do. So now you have the feeling, and that closes the question of whether an ordinary person in an ordinary home can actually do this. You can tonight, but feeling it with a key on a string and delivering it with an actual driver in your hands are two different steps. And there was one last piece I still had to find. The piece that takes this from a nice living room drill to a fix that adds real yards off the tee this weekend. And I found it in the most specific place of all. Let me give you the finale, the part I promised you at the start, the move itself, put together from everything the trail finally gave up. In the later complete edition of Ernest Jones's book, Swing the Clubhead, and confirmed for me decades later by modern ball flight data from launch monitors like the ones the professionals use now, the same truth appears from two completely different centuries. And when the old book and the modern numbers agreed, I knew I had the real thing. Here is the move. It has two parts, and together they fix the driver specifically, not the irons, the driver. The first part is the swinging feeling you just learned with the key on the lace. When you step up to your driver, you have exactly one thought, and it is not a body position. Your thought is, feel the weight of the club head and swing that weight. Take it back smooth and unhurried. Feel the heaviness of the head, and then simply let it swing down and through like the knife on the handkerchief, staying quiet and loose in your shoulders and letting the head be the fast part. You are not trying to hit the ball hard. You are trying to swing the club head freely, and you let the ball just get in the way of that free swing. That single change stops you from casting and coming over the top, which is what squares the face and kills the slice. But here is the second part, the part that turns a fixed slice into real distance. And this is where the old book and the modern science shook hands. Ernest Jones understood, and the launch monitors now prove with hard numbers that the driver is the one club in your bag you are meant to hit slightly on the upswing, not down on it the way you hit an iron, up on it. The modern data is blunt about this. For a lot of everyday golfers who swing at ordinary speeds, changing from hitting down on the driver to hitting up on it, catching the ball as the club head is already rising through the bottom of that swinging arc, can add somewhere between 20 and 40 yards a carry with the very same swing speed, same effort, same body, just a better strike, higher launch, and less backspin. And how do you make yourself hit up instead of down? You do not force it with a manipulation. You set it up so the swinging arc naturally catches the ball on the way up. Two tiny changes do it, and both are free. Tee the ball higher than you think you should. High enough that half the ball sits above the top edge of the driver when the club rests on the ground. Most people tee it far too low, which forces them to hit down and slap the ball offline. Then set the ball forward in your stance, up off the inside of your lead foot, the foot closest to the target. That simple position means that by the time the swinging club head reaches the ball, it has already passed the bottom of its arc and is on the way up, exactly where the head is moving up and the face is square. Now put the two parts together and you have the whole move that this entire trail was leading to. Tee it high, ball forward, and then do nothing but swing the club head, that heavy weight on the end of the shaft, smooth and free, letting it rise into the back of the ball while your body stays quiet and simply responds to the swing. That is it. That is the move. That is what a one-legged man knew in 1916, what he wrote down in 1937, what Percy Boomer confirmed in 1942, and what a modern launch monitor confirmed again in our own century. The slice comes from muscling the club and hitting down with an open face. This move replaces the muscling with swinging and replaces the downward slap with an upward strike on a square face. It fixes the two problems at the exact same time with one feeling and two setup changes, and it costs you nothing. I went and did it, tee high, ball forward, key on a string feeling in my hands. And that stubborn drive that had leaked right into the same clump of trees for years came off the face straight, high, and long, with that crack instead of a slap, and I stood there almost laughing because I hadn't swung harder. I'd swung easier. The one-legged man had been right the whole time, and it had taken me an old magazine, a 1937 book, and a house key tied to a shoelace to finally hear him. That is the thing I keep coming back to quietly when I put my clubs away. Somebody already solved this. Almost 100 years ago, a man who lost his leg in a war solved the exact problem you've been fighting on the first tee, and he gave the answer away for free. And it got buried under decades of complicated, expensive noise because a simple truth doesn't sell subscriptions. And tonight, with a key and a shoelace, you took it back. If you're the kind of person who doesn't just want the headline tip, who wants to know where it came from and why it disappeared and whether it's actually real, then you already know why you stayed to the end of this, and you're exactly the kind of person I make these for. So here's what I want from you, and I'm asking you directly, because I know this audience doesn't always speak up unless someone asks. Tell me in the comments, when you swing that key on the string tonight, could you feel the weight reach its fastest point at the bottom of the arc? Yes or no? Just tell me you felt it. I read every one of these, and I want to know if it clicked for you the way it finally clicked for me. And if you want to keep pulling these threads with me, follow along, because this channel is really just a group of people quietly reclaiming the simple, low-cost knowledge that got taken from us and sold back in pieces. The next trail I'm chasing is even stranger. It's about an old way people used to stop a hook and a slice using nothing but the position of one thumb, a method described in a manual older than any of the ones I showed you today, and I think it might be even simpler than the key on the string, but that's a case for next time. Go tie that key to a shoelace, feel it swing, and the next time you stand on that tee, remember the man on one leg who already knew, I'm going to stop you right here, because there's more. Inside the Practical Wisdom Circle, I pick up right where we just left off and take you through the full Ernest Jones method. If something doesn't click, ask me directly, and a real person answers myself. You won't be doing this alone. You belong here with us. Just point your phone's camera at the code on your screen, and you can cancel anytime, one click.